By actually commending the chairman of ECOWAS, President Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for deploying diplomatic dexterity to get ECOWAS out of the political conundrum that ECOWAS finds itself, following the appeals made by an elder statesman, General Yakubu Gawan, as well as who is one of the founding fathers of ECOWAS, as well as other faith-based organizations and traditional institutions and civil society organizations, as mentioned by His Excellency. But let's look at it in another perspective. You see, what is the objective of ECOWAS? ECOWAS was primarily set up to promote cooperation, economic cooperation among member states, to raise the living standard of the citizens of that country, to provide sustainable development. And I think we have to give kudos to ECOWAS, because over the past 49 years, I think ECOWAS has been able, looking at the figures of 2022, the trading within the ECOWAS countries, based on the liberalization, free movement of goods and services, has hit about $77 million. Now, trading of ECOWAS with the rest part of the world, it was quite amazing looking at the data. It's about over 277 billion US dollars. That is a veritable platform that can provide leverage to African countries, to the countries in ECOWAS, whenever they are negotiating favorable trade deals. If you look at the GDP of ECOWAS, you are looking at a GDP of over 700 billion US dollars, which is one of the pillars for the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The success of that depends to a large extent on the capacity of the regions to bolster the trade. Now, narrowing it down to the olive branch that has now been extended by ECOWAS, I think they should be reasonable to take this olive branch, because, as he has mentioned these three countries have been benefiting from several projects of ECOWAS. If you talk about food security, it's surprising that these three countries hold about over 50% of the strategic grain reserve of ECOWAS. And they are benefiting from the World Bank resilience funds of about over $230 million. If you talk about the issue of livestock, for example, within the ECOWAS region, you know, some time ago, the ECOWAS Supreme Court passed a judgment that there should be free movement of livestock within the ECOWAS region. And you know the problems, the attendant problems that comes with livestock, especially in Nigeria, the farmers' herders clash. Anyway, the World Bank came up with another package, I think over $200 million, to support pastoralism within the ECOWAS region. And these countries are beneficiaries. If you go a little bit forward, when they accuse ECOWAS of being pay lip service to fighting security in the Sahel, I think ECOWAS came up with a framework, a security framework, and that security framework, it was supported with about $100 million, and at the same time, these three countries benefited directly. They got about $7 million to provide logistic support to the armed forces in order to combat the fight against terrorism. All right? Now, if you go a little bit further, you see that these countries have challenges of desertification. So the issue of famine. Climate change has been a problem in these countries. And ECOWAS came up with a strategic plan. Hold on just a minute. With a strategic plan, that is the irrigation plan. And it has provided a lot of funds. As the president of the commission said, that they will be losing out the 500 million package funding several projects, apart from the exposure they have from the ECOWAS Bank. So what I'm saying is that I think they should take the olive branch. They should participate.
If you think these countries have benefited so much from ECOWAS, why do you think they intend to exit ECOWAS?
Of course, there are external pressures. All right? The anti-West sentiments. You see, within the wider context, you remember the Ukraine-Russia war. You remember the war of nerves between Russia and the West. Macron, the president of France, had an altercation with President Putin, where Putin said, look, I may not fight you directly, but then covertly, you will see. And it's not surprising that the Francophone countries have bolted out, they have truncated their constitutional government, they have sacked France.
Yes.
France has lost out. All right? And Russia has established its presence right now in these countries. In Burkina Faso, they have over 200, what they call the African Corps, to support and provide security in Burkina Faso. You go to Niger, it's something. The Wagner Group has now been transformed into the African Corps, of course, with vested interests in the mineral deposits in these countries. The uranium, the gold, the iron, the bauxite, the manganese. These countries are rich with natural resources. It's only the people that are poor. So it is a vested interest. And this anti-West sentiment gave rise to this, the truncation of this constitutional order. And again, the issue of democracy. What is the definition of democracy? The wider definition is government of the people,
For the people.
for the people,
And by the people.
and by the people. So the absence of good governance, the absence of level playing field, building democratic institutions, the fight against corruption, all right?
Yes.
And a sense of belonging,
Yes.
an inclusive system.
Yes.
If it is absent, then of course these things are bound to happen, and of course Russia, within the wider context, has cashed in. And I will not be surprised if ECOWAS and AU do not arrest the situation in Senegal. It may join
Yes,
the Francophone countries.
Some experts are saying that it is sort of a return of the Cold War, and it's like it's now a system that Africa is now being recolonized, because these countries are saying they want to detangle themselves from the colonial administration. I don't like using the colonial master, people always use it's an administration. And let's bring in Mr. Dabugat into this conversation. The lifting of sanctions, they say, is a new push for dialogue. And experts also said that the planned exit of these countries from the regional bloc will undermine the regional integrity and integration process efforts of ECOWAS. This, especially with the African Free Trade Agreement, and that if allowed to happen, it will be a messy deal with a loss of more than $100 billion, dollars in the making. What is your reaction to the lifting of the sanctions, if not all? And what do you think would be the response? Because we have not had any response from these countries based on the lifting of the sanctions. What do you think their response will be?
Yeah, thank you very much. I will talk more from a practical angle, given that I am a representative of the civil society. I can assure you that what ECOWAS has done is exactly what we had requested in our letter to ECOWAS on the 7th of December last year, ahead of the summit. And so we are happy to see that ECOWAS has been able to do that. In fact, I can guarantee you that the news I received yesterday from people in Niger is that there was jubilation, particularly in the border towns, because that is like a dream come true for them, So this has laid a foundation for solid dialogue. And as the two ambassadors have mentioned, it is, it is only, if you are on your path to destruction, that when you receive a very clear, positive advance, and then you don't respond. So we're waiting to see what response the military juntas will give to this. However, I would look at it also from both sides. Yeah. Of course, if these three countries had gone ahead, or will go ahead to continue their exit from ECOWAS, definitely they are in the losing side, you know, because population-wise they are not up to, I would say 20%. The three countries they are not up to 20% of the population. They are not up to 10%. I think Ambassador was a bit conservative. They are about 10% of the economy of ECOWAS. And the populations of these countries are the ones with the lowest purchasing power in ECOWAS. So in reality, what they will lose will be great. I mean, the banks that operate across the West African region, I don't think any of them is actually originating from these countries. So even financial transactions are, they will lose from that. But as it has been pointed out, these countries might have been spurred by the international, pressure to say we're leaving. But at the same time, this is, I would see it also from the more positive side, that their announcement of exit was a negotiation move.
Okay.
So we are hoping to see a reversal of that. And really for us, looking at this side of the ECOWAS, the one that remains within ECOWAS, I think it will also be at a disadvantage, because ECOWAS will now just be a thin strip of coastal, land. And we hear, I can't confirm that, but we hear that some other countries, coastal countries, were even moving to negotiate with these three countries to serve as their, trade corridor. So, it's a dangerous thing to have allowed to continue. And ECOWAS has actually taken the right move.
All right.
It's